Let's take you to Canberra now, where our political editor, Lyndall Curtis, is speaking to the opposition communications spokesman, Malcolm Turnbull. Lyndall?
Malcolm Turnbull, welcome to ABC News 24.
Great to be here.
Why don't you like these changes?
Well, this is just a characteristically chaotic response by this minister, enraged by the flaying he's getting and he and his government are getting from the newspapers, principally the News Limited newspapers, or especially them, and he's been threatening some form of additional regulation for some time, and so what he's come up with is an attempt to further regulate the media. These are regulations that are completely unnecessary and actually unworkable.
But he didn't propose what some had called for. That's a fit and proper person test to see who could own a media company. He didn't impose government-funded regulation of the media. Isn't this a watered-down version of what some inside his own party had been calling for?
Well, I'm not sure you're right there. He said that media acquisitions are going to be subject to a public interest test. He hasn't said how the public interest will be defined. He hasn't disclosed what the criteria are.
But he has talked about a lessening of diversity.
Well, but hang on. But he said, yes, he said he wants to protect a diversity of voices. But Lyndall, we've never had so many voices in the media as we have at the moment. The internet has given rise to so many additional sources of news and information. That is one of the remarkable transformations in our time. But and of course you've got the ACCC there, the competition regulator, which has shown itself quite ready to stop media acquisition, such as Seven's attempt to buy into Fox Sports, because it would impact on competition. So the bottom line really here is this: he wants to introduce a vague, subjective, political concept to limit and constrain the freedom of the press. And it's bad politics, it's bad law because it's unworkable, and it certainly would not have our support and doesn't have the support, I think, of anyone that cares seriously about freedom of the press.
Are you happy then with the status quo, with the Press Council, beefed up as it has been, regulating the print media? And is there a need for some sort of separate regulation or same regulation of what's online?
Well, I don't think there's any need for additional regulation. We have laws about defamation and contempt of court. I mean, why does the media need to be regulated? Citizens should be able to discern amidst a diversity of voices where they think the truth lies, where they think the sound opinion lies. What is this nanny state obsession that the government has? Why does Stephen Conroy think that he should be able to tell you what you can read and where you can read it and what you can hear? I mean, look, you're either committed to freedom or you're not. You're either committed to a democracy where there is a free press, a free media, or you're not. Now, he isn't. We are.
There have been, while you say there is a diversity of voices given the rise of the internet and the sorts of blogs we've seen, there has been, though, a contraction in the major media organisations. Is there not the possibility of having fewer voices, fewer, say, local newspapers or local TV and radio news bulletins from the major media players, the people that can fund journalism? Yeah,
I think local news is that the threat to local news is not because of concentration of ownership, and the government can't legislate to can legislate to an extent, but the problem is lack of revenue. The real threat to journalism is the biggest threat, I think, other than governments trying to regulate it, but the biggest threat, economic threat, is that while they've got more readers than they've ever had before because of the broadcast of their stuff, their articles, their papers online to a much bigger audience, the advertising base has shrunk away, and that's what's hurting local news. That's what's hurting local news, whether it's local to Sydney and the Sydney newspapers or in country towns.
Given the position of some in the newspaper sector, their attitude to what the ABC in particular is doing online, given that the ABC is taxpayer funded and people don't have to pay to see what they're seeing online, is there any concern that you have of modernising the ABC's charter to include its online presence?
Well, obviously to see what's proposed, but if you're asking, perhaps put the question in a different way. If the question is, do I think there is anything the ABC is doing online that is wrong or beyond what ought to be its charter or its charter, then I'd say no. I mean, the vast bulk of the ABC's online content is simply transcripts or opportunities to download and replay ABC broadcast material. The only, well, there's a couple of them, but you know, the principal written for text blog site, if you like, of the ABC is The Drum. And you know, I have to be honest with you, Lyndall, I'm acutely anxious about the problems of the newspaper industry. You know, I lose sleep at night worrying about what is happening to these great foundations of journalism, and you know, where will the successful business model be found? But I have to say, the travails of the newspaper industry cannot be laid at the door of The Drum. You know, if people at Fairfax or News think that The Drum is their problem, then really they've got their eye on the wrong issue.
One final question. You've said if these laws were passed and the coalition won the next election, you'd roll back the changes. Can you, though, see a time where the media is truly converged, when site that used to be newspaper sites are producing more and more video content, where sites that used to be broadcast sites are producing lots of text, that media regulations will need to be reviewed? Well,
I'm not sure that you need any I mean, why do we need to regulate Fairfax or News if it's doing videos on their websites, as they are, of course? And in that's actually where they're getting some of their best advertising revenues, in the pre-roll video ads. But why do we need to regulate that? I mean, the reason the ABC is regulated, you know, within its own legislation, is because it is taxpayer funded. The reason the free-to-air broadcasters have a degree of regulation is because they are using licensed public spectrum. It belongs to the public. If Fairfax or you or I want to put a video on our website, why should the government be regulating that? As long as we don't defame people or commit some contempt of court, why is it the government's business to limit what we say? I mean, who's speaking up for freedom here? Why is there this government has a compulsive obsession to regulate? That seems to be their whole sort of reason for existence. They want to regulate everything.
Malcolm Turnbull, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.